Want to make a podcast? Spotify's got a platform that lets you make one super easily, then distribute it everywhere and earn money, all in one place for free. It's called Spotify for Podcasters, and here's how it works. Spotify for Podcasters lets you record and edit podcasts right from your phone or computer, so no matter what your setup is like, you can start creating today. Then you can distribute your podcast to Spotify and everywhere else podcasts are heard. Video podcasts are also available on Spotify. With Spotify for Podcasters, you can earn money in a variety of ways, including ads and podcast subscriptions. And best of all, it's totally free with no catch. Ever since we discovered Spotify for Podcasters, we have had so much fun trying out all of the features like Q&As and polls that let us be really creative and engage with our audience. I highly recommend you give it a try. Download the Spotify for Podcasters app or go to www.spotify.com/podcasters to get started.
For the second time on the show, we are so pleased to have Christopher Jackson, legendary royal photographer, to chat about his new book, Charles III, A King and His Queen, which is out April 18th. In addition to his work photographing the royals over the past 20 years, Chris has two other books, both of which I own and both of which I love, called Modern Monarchy and Elizabeth II, A Queen for Our Time. He has traveled to over 100 countries during his time as a royal photographer, in addition to photographing day-to-day royal engagements on the home front in the UK. The history you've seen, Chris. Welcome back to the show, our second timer. We're so glad to have you.
Wow, thank you very much for having me. It's really special. I'm really excited about the new book, so thank you very much for having me on the show.
You write that you turned this book around in a record amount of time. What was your goal to get this out so quickly? Was it the coronation?
Yeah, I think that's true, and we felt that obviously the coronation, huge event, definitely going to be the highlight of 2023, and I think we felt it was really important that we got a book out as soon as we could ahead of that. It's obviously going to be a huge and exciting period of national celebration, of sort of global celebration, and I think it was really important that we got the book ready. Hopefully, it's a bit of an insight into the characters of our new king and queen, and I've been lucky enough to photograph them for coming up to 20 years now, and I'm really, it's been a huge privilege, and I think putting the book together ahead of the coronation was really important to us.
Well, as ever, the photos in this book are magnificent. I think probably if I had to choose a favorite, there's a few of them, but I love the photo of the king doing his work with the red boxes in the garden outside his outdoor office, I think you called it. That's one of my favorites. And the photo of the king kissing Her Late Majesty's hand, obviously, is one of my favorites, very sentimental. So, how do you even begin to choose from the thousands of photos you take? Which photos make it in the book? Can you walk us through that process? That seems overwhelming.
Yeah. Yeah, of course, it's a big headache in summary, but thank you. Good choice of pictures, first of all. I think that's one of my favorites as well. And simply because a lot of the time, it says memories behind the pictures. And I really remember being at Highgrave on that day, one of the hottest days of the year, and the king was working outside on his papers and his box, and he's even got his telephone out there, his cabled telephone.
Wow.
Which is going all the way back in. You can get a glimpse into some of the stunning gardens at Highgrave, obviously somewhere that is very special to the king and the queen. Yeah, and it is really difficult to choose which pictures to put into the book, and I think even more so with this particular royal couple, because I've spent so long photographing them, traveling to so many places around the world, and just built up this massive archive of images. And it is very, very tough, trying to pick the images to illustrate each particular chapter and each particular story. So it's a really enjoyable process. So, it can be tough at times, but ultimately it's something that was incredibly enjoyable because it's nice. As I say in the introduction, it's really nice to kind of look back on some of those special moments or places we've been in the past. Places like the Galapagos Islands, Pakistan, Indonesia, of course, Australia, New Zealand, and Canada, and the States. And it's lovely to go back and remember some of those moments and put some of these images together. And I think what is really special about these two is that I've been able to photograph quite a lot behind the scenes with the king and the queen, and it just gives the book a little bit of depth, I think, and I hope. I'm not sure what you both think, but it's great, and there's some really some lovely moments in there with members of the family as well. You mentioned, of course, the late Queen Elizabeth, and I think the bond that the new king has with Queen Elizabeth was really special. It was certainly a symbiotic relationship, learning from someone who had dedicated her lifetime to duty in such a kind of special way. And I think hopefully that comes across in some of the pictures.
Absolutely.
Well, the book is also full of photos of Charles and Camilla. What are they like as a couple based on the interactions that you've seen? I know you've talked about their teamwork and their shared sense of humor. So really curious, their chemistry together based on your experience.
Yeah, they're two people that, at an age when many people have retired, they work together incredibly hard. They often have very grueling kind of schedules. Of course, traveling around the world on royal tours is very demanding, crossing time zones. And I think, they work together, they work very well as a team. And I think teamwork is absolutely crucial to their relationship. They work together a huge amount. And they've created, over the years, a very successful way of doing that. And it's great to photograph them together. They have a fantastic relationship. And I think, their interactions with members of the public, not only in the UK and sort of domestically, but also around the world, they have this amazing way of connecting with people very quickly, which, of course, they don't often get the liberty of time when they're meeting people around the world. And they immediately put them at ease. And I think that's, witnessing this firsthand is one of the key skills I see that they both employ when meeting people wherever they are.
I think one of you, obviously you're an incredibly talented photographer, but one of your best qualities as a photographer is that you're able to really see the personality of the subject that you're taking photos of shine through in your photos. Like those photos, you really get a sense of Charles's personality or Camilla's personalities. I'm thinking right now of I think we're going to talk about this in a minute, the hilarious Dyson moment in Singapore where I don't even know how to explain that on the air. Listeners, you're just gonna have to read the book. But he's making a joke and he's doing something hilariously funny, and you can just see his personality and his sense of humor shining through that photograph, which is really difficult because it's a photograph, but you can get it's textured. So how, as a photographer, do you capture the personality of the people that you're photographing?
Good question. Thank you very much. That's very kind, firstly. And secondly, I'm glad that you feel that about the book, because this is one of my favorite books, because I probably had more access behind the scenes with the King and the Queen. And it's been very special over the years to capture some of these kind of special moments. And one thing that stands out, hopefully from the book, is that they both have a great sense of humor. And this is really important, I think, when you're in the situations that they often find themselves in. Having that great sense of humor is a way to sort of break down barriers, make people feel relaxed. Of course, it makes fantastic photos at times. That particular moment in the Dyson Innovation Center, I think it was in Singapore, and the King was suggesting that I had something on my trousers and they needed hoovering, except hoovering is the wrong word. When I say hoovering, it's got to be vacuuming, because of course Hoover's a totally different brand, but he was vacuuming my trousers. But you never know what to expect with the King, and that's what makes him great to photograph. There's kind of like those moments when you're on royal tour. And often royal tour, it's in different countries and different environments, different cultures, and it often makes for the most sort of candid and telling photographs, which give you a sort of glimpse into their personalities. And I always enjoy going away on trips like that.
Mm-hmm.
Well, speaking of personality, we know what Charles is like as a public figure, but can you tell us what he's like as a father or a grandfather?
I think, over the years I've been lucky enough to photograph not only those kind of formal moments, the moments behind the scenes in various sort of palaces and gardens and places that the King and the Queen call home over the years, but also some of those family moments. And that's always really special to capture kind of lovely interactions between members of the family. And of course, this is a family that works together quite often. Only yesterday, I was at the Commonwealth Day service in Westminster
Mm-hmm.
Abbey, and of course, we saw Princess Anne, Princess Royal, the King and the Queen, the Prince and Princess of Wales. So it's lovely to see the family together in a kind of professional environment, but it's always lovely and always a privilege to capture kind of family moments. And we obviously see, some of the children and grandchildren a little bit less often, but it makes those moments even more special. And he's clearly, a grandfather who has a great relationship with his children. And to see King Charles Prince of Wales as he was then, at the Platinum Jubilee with Prince Louis on his lap, sort of bouncing along to the music, was just a lovely moment. And it reminds me of a picture I took of both of them together for his 70th birthday in the garden of Clarence House a few years before. And, watching the children grow up and their relationship with their grandparents is really special.
Well, let's talk about that 70th birthday photo in the garden of Clarence House, because one of my favorite anecdotes from the book was the behind the scenes anecdote of that family photo, which listeners, almost all of you will recognize. It's got the whole family in there, and the photo with the bear. So can you, we know what happens in front of the camera, this beautiful photo that we've all seen, but then in the book we learn that there to entertain the children behind the scenes, there is this person in a bear costume. So can you tell us that story?
Well, yeah, I mean, it's of course, I think with this book, what I tried to do is not only show, some of those moments that we might all recognize, images of the royal family, but also some of the kind of little stories behind those moments. And this was a real privilege to photograph as he was then, the Prince of Wales for his 70th birthday. And this was a formal family photograph in the gardens of Clarence House. So, of course, as a photographer, you're always a little bit nervous before these big moments. It's obviously a huge privilege to take important photos like this that hopefully sort of live in the Royal Archive for a while. But I think it was a way of relaxing everybody, something a little bit different. Of course, you want everyone to smile and look in the same direction. And so the idea we had was to introduce this bear into the mix. So it made quite a funny behind the scenes photo, as you can imagine. And it was just a fantastic kind of light-hearted moment, I think. And I had to try and source the bear suit ahead of time. And I think, it was a slightly sort of trial and error situation. And the first bear suit I came across was a little bit scary, and I tried it out on my son when he was in the bath, and he totally freaked out. So I managed to find a more friendly looking one by the time it got to the actual photo shoot. So hopefully it made for a nice, lovely, relaxed picture and something a little bit different. So it was really nice to be able to put that in the book.
Well, I'd also love a behind the scenes story of the 4 generations of monarchs Christmas pudding photo. Can you share a little about that one?
Yeah, that's a real favorite of mine, because I think, and it really illustrates the point that, quite often you're taking these candid, relaxed, these candid photographs. And for me, they're the ones I enjoy taking the most, hopefully give you more of an insight into the characters of the members of the royal family. And this was a particularly historic one, I suppose, because you had Queen Elizabeth there with the heirs to the throne, Prince George, Prince Charles, as it was then, and Prince William. And it was taken in association with a charity that was supporting military personnel at Christmas time. You can see the Christmas tree in the background. There's some kind of rather regal decorations on the tree, and everyone's joining in. The Queen is joining in with mixing the Christmas pudding. George is obviously enthusiastically getting involved there, and it's a rare moment, and it's a photo that's got that kind of deeper historical context. So it was really special to capture that.
Well, we're wondering if there are any other behind the scenes stories you'd like to share about photos in the book that particularly compel you, because again, we just see what's happening in front of the camera, but if there's any other stories that are happening behind the scenes.
Yeah, I think there's a sort of few moments in there which are kind of special to me. Of course, you spend your life traveling around the world and royal tour, things don't always go to plan. I think that is the nature of this kind of photography, which is what makes it so enjoyable and fun and unexpected. And it's definitely those unexpected moments which I really enjoy capturing. I managed to crash my bike once in a park near myself, near my home in West London, and I'd smashed my eye socket, and so I couldn't really see out of my eye, and I had to go and have an operation to kind of rebuild it. But I was absolutely desperate to get back to work after a couple of weeks, and there was a trip to South Africa and Tanzania with the then Prince and Princess of the Prince of Wales and the Duchess of Cornwall. And I was itching to get back to work, and I decided I should, against sort of advice from everybody, I decided I needed to get on this royal tour. And I've only missed one or two in the last sort of 18, 20 years. So it was really important to me that I went on this trip. And I spent the whole trip wandering around with my neck cricked at an angle, kind of looking down the camera lens. It must have looked very bizarre because I could only see out of one eye. And I think the Duchess just thought I wondered what was going on. And I think it's kind of testament to her kind of caring character that she called me in to check I was okay and if there's anything she could do to help. But it eventually I got a lot better over that 2 weeks. I think it was, when you've got something like that, but actually getting stuck into something totally different, often it helps you sort of push through, and it got a lot better. But I was still sort of wandering around a Masai Boma at the end in Tanzania, taking these photographs of the royal couple. So, there's always these kind of unexpected things that go on behind the camera, but you try and push on through, because I suppose being a royal photographer, you have to be there for these moments.
Right.
It's not going to stop for you. There could be a historic christening, a historic wedding, anything, and it's not gonna. They're not going to say, actually, Chris, we'll do it next week. It's going to happen.
Right.
So quite often, you have these challenging moments, and you have to kind of figure out a way around it, and making sure you're there to take those photos.
Well, talking a little bit more about our monarchs, you said before to us when we chatted that the Queen was so striking when she entered the room. Does the King have that same effect?
I think, of course, last year was, a year of incredible highs and, incredible lows with the Platinum Jubilee and the passing of Queen Elizabeth. And she was this absolutely iconic figure. I will really never forget her amazing smile. I suppose it's almost a cliche now, but she was incredible. Her dry sense of humor. I remember taking one of her last official portraits up in Sandringham. It's in the book, actually, with the red box that she worked on every day of her life, apart from Christmas and Easter. And she's smiling, that incredible commitment to duty that she showed right to the end. And I think, whilst they are different characters, she's passed on a lot of that kind of incredible commitment. And it's something that the King clearly has. He has this incredible work ethic, sense of duty, of course, passionate about many different things, famously the environment. Of course, he's had to change the way he does things slightly. Now he's a king. But I think the passion still burns very deeply. These are still really important issues to him. And yeah, he is a different character. He's a different person.
Mhm.
But he has his incredible attributes and his famous sense of humor. So I think he does. He's got an amazing. He's great to photograph. I always enjoy photographing the king because he has he has a great face to photograph. He's got a great manner when he meets people. He always seems to make a picture. Always seems to happen. Sometimes more unexpected, but he has an aura around him, and I think that has been evident in the photographs I've taken over the years. But of course, people are different, characters different, all different members of the royal family are different characters, and that's what makes my job so enjoyable. That there's variety and everyone is different to photograph and has a different personality.
Well, harkening back to that photo from the Dyson Technology Center in Singapore, the king is most certainly interacting with you. So obviously, and you mentioned earlier um, that Camilla that's very kind of her to ask, are you okay, while you were on tour? And so, how often do you interact with the royals you photograph? Or are you typically keen to stay in the background? I mean, obviously, after all of these years, they very much know who you are.
Yeah, of course. And I think that's a really good question. I think, familiarity is important. We all work in jobs where it's nice to know who the people are around us. But I think what's important is, I am very much there to document what's going on in front of me, and that involves the royals interacting with the people they're meeting or the subjects or whatever's going on in the photograph I'm taking. So I think, whilst there are sort of rare moments like that, it is very important to me that I'm almost like a fly on the wall. And that's how I like to work. I think it's the most enjoyable way of working, where you're in the room, but hopefully not drawing any attention. Of course, you've got a camera, and that can be quite intrusive at times. Although these days, I have totally silent cameras, and I think it means that you can be very unobtrusive. So taking that kind of photojournalistic fly on the wall approach to capture those moments and just be, certainly don't just jump in and click away. It's about, holding back and waiting for that moment and being ready to take it when it happens. I think that's one of the skills you learn as a royal photographer. But of course, over the years, and we've traveled so many places around the world, that familiarity is really nice to have. It makes the job more enjoyable for everyone. And I think a level of trust in that sense is important, because of course, if it's trusting that you're going to behave in a certain way in a certain situation. Quite often as a royal photographer, you find yourselves in very sort of delicate situations, and I think a sensitivity to those moments for me is certainly really important.
So many of the photos in this book are from royal tours. Can you tell us what your most memorable royal tour is that you've ever been on and why?
Wow, good question. So royal tours are the way that the royal family gets out and about around the world. The Queen Elizabeth once said, "You have to be seen to be believed," and I think that is really important. The royals, the king, our new king, is only second to the Queen as who was the most travelled monarch in the world, and King Charles is very close behind her. And I think it's important. It makes him a man of the world. He has immersed himself in so many different cultures and societies around the world. It's built, a depth of knowledge which enables him to connect with so many different people across different cultures and different religions. And I've seen this firsthand, and it sort of makes him the man that he is today. This incredible depth of experience, absolutely mind blowing. But yeah, people are always keen to see them wherever you go, and often there'll be a royal walkabout, and they'll try and meet as many people as possible, and they're often frenetic and energetic, but also very enjoyable moments. And I think the king tries to cram in as much as he can do on royal tours, up to 8 engagements in a day. He doesn't have lunch, something that I always struggle with myself. I'm always trying to find food from somewhere. Yeah, I know. It's good, but he's got a great work ethic, as I mentioned before, and I think I'm sorry, I've totally forgot what your original question was. What was that?
What was your favorite or your most
Oh,
memorable
favorite
royal
trip.
tour?
Yes, apologies. Well, with the King and the Queen, I've been so lucky to go to so many incredible places, and I certainly it's one of the things that got me into photography. This traveling to all these amazing places, it's been incredible. I think a couple there. The Galapagos Islands was certainly somewhere I never thought I'd go to for work, and so that was an amazing privilege to go to this incredible island where the wildlife was just behaved so differently to anywhere else I'd been before. Um, and we met Lonesome George at the last, I think he's a Pinta Island turtle, before he sadly passed away a few years later. So I was lucky. He was the last of that species. So that species is now extinct. But it really highlighted some of the issues that we're facing globally, with sort of climate crisis and all that kind of stuff. So very special place to go to. And where else have I been? Pakistan, absolutely love. I'm lucky to be in a few times, with the Prince and Princess of Wales as well, and I just love visiting their amazing, vibrant culture, beautiful country. With the King and the Queen, we went up to Skardu, which is a mountainous district in the Kashmir region of Pakistan, and I'll never forget the plane, which was a kind of quite a big sort of Boeing-esque plane, landed at this airstrip in Skardu, up in the Himalayas, and it had to land on what was basically a flat piece of land, nestled amongst the Himalayas, and it had to bank hard and kind of spiral down, and land at this, probably the most picturesque airfield I've ever seen in my life. But it was a huge privilege to go up there and meet some of the people. And I think we actually saw some of the damage from a devastating earthquake that had hit Pakistan, and saw how so many people were struggling, and it was really important to the Royal Couple. They sort of did something to help. So it was, challenging, but also a privilege to be in such a beautiful and spectacular country.
Well, as you said, you photographed basically every major royal family moment throughout your career, but the Queen's funeral last September was something on a different level. It was a different magnitude. So you are living history in those moments. What is it like to be living history like that? You are taking photos that will be used in history books for centuries. What is it like to be a part of that?
Um, I suppose that's one of the unique things about photographing the royal family, that you do have these big sort of historic moments, and again, a bit of a cliche, but a front row seat to these moments, and it does often feel like that. And I think it's a buzz to be a part of these events. And the nice thing about photographing the royal family as well, which is most often, these are, happy events, births, christenings. There's a national excitement around that, and I think obviously the passing of Queen Elizabeth was just a very surreal, and well, I'll never forget it. It was unbelievable for me, for someone who's photographed the Queen for so many years, that this had happened. And I was standing on a bridge in Windsor, when the news came through, that she'd passed away. And I looked around me, and members of the public were getting the same news on their phones. And at that exact moment, an incredible rainbow appeared above the round tower of St. George's Tower in Windsor Castle, the Queen's home. And it was just incredibly vibrant, right above the Union flag, as it was the moment it was lowered to half mast. And it just felt like absolutely hands down the most surreal moment of my life. And then that followed with 10 days of rushing up and down the country, trying to capture and document as much as possible. And it really was a whirlwind, but quite a weird feeling, for me as a photographer, but very important. I thought it was important to capture every element of that period, for the history books. And of course, it wasn't just me. There was, many moments and many powerful photographs from that period taken from different photographers. who were capturing all aspects of these moments. I mean, there was one Getty Images photographer, a fantastic news photographer, David Ramos, who just documented the queue that had formed to kind of see the Queen lying in state. And, he shot it with a news photographer's eye, and it was really beautiful photography, considered photography. And, but, that was just one element of that whole period, of course. And it was incredible to be a sort of a part of that historic period, but, also really, really weird, I think.
Yeah.
Well, as we've been talking, I just had this question kind of come to mind. I'm really curious. Can you share a favorite location, or whether it's a royal residence or a palace or maybe an outdoor landmark or somewhere that you find to be particularly beautiful that you really love to take photographs of?
Good question. I love the King and Queen's house in Wales. I'm actually Welsh, and it's from down the road from where I live. So entirely selfishly, it's always lovely. It's a great excuse that I get about my family since moved away from Wales. So whenever the royals travel down to Wales, it's a great excuse for me to effectively go home. It always feels like home. And the house that the king bought for the Duchy of Cornwall and has done up near a place called Llandovery in Wales is really beautiful. It's very sort of a far cry from a glitzy royal palace. It's very much a Welsh house, and he is obviously passionate about the gardens. We all know famously that Highgrave has this incredible garden. Of course, he's worked on Dumfries House, but I just love the Wales house. It's quite low key. They spend time down there. There's a Wales week every year, and you can often hear the sounds of the harp. There's an official harp player, and she often comes down and plays on the evenings at the Wales house, and it's just really special and quite low key, and I just love it.
Wow.
Well, our very last question for you, and this has been such a treat, but as the king's reign is still less than a year old, and you will probably photograph him for the vast majority of his reign, if not the whole reign, what aspect of his reign are you most looking forward to photographing?
I suppose it's I'm looking forward to when we start traveling again. Of course, it's very exciting. There's a state visit coming up to France and Germany, and this is the first trip away for the King and the Queen. So it's obviously my first trip photographing the King and Queen on a royal tour. So that's really exciting, and I think there's going to be subtle differences for these trips. Of course, the nature of the fact he is a head of state, it is a state visit now, so that's the first big change. And I think I'm just looking forward to photographing this year. Above everything, we've got the coronation coming up, and of course, that's really the foremost in my mind. That's what I'm focused on. And beyond that, we are in a sort of period of transition here. So I'm looking forward to how the year pans out. I don't know all the answers by any means. Of course, things like Royal Ascot, Trooping the Colour. All these events where the Queen Elizabeth was often, this kind of center of attention, are gonna change, and I think that's exciting to see how they change. And I think it's part of the transition of history. As history moves forward, and I'm looking forward to that kind of new dynamic, I suppose. Of course, the King and the Queen are going to do things slightly differently. Some things will remain very much the same. Tradition is a really important thing when you're in the royal family. So many things will remain fairly similar, but I'm sure he'll change certain things. So yeah, we are in this period of transition, and I don't know exactly how everything's going to pan out throughout the year. I'm looking forward to getting out on some trips sort of globally a little bit more. Hopefully at some point back in Australia, New Zealand, Canada, the US, I'm really looking forward to that with whichever members of the royal family are traveling. So, it's I think all focus at the moment is on the coronation, and beyond that, there's lots of exciting things to look forward to.
Charles III, A King and His Queen is out April 18th. Thank you so much for being here today. It was so great to talk to you again.
Hey, thank you so much for having me. It's really special, and I'm really excited that you like the book. So thank you very much for having me.
Thank you.